Okay, we're going to take a step back and we're going to talk about what's deemed inflection, which just means when we conjugate or change a word to tell who's doing the action. And yeah, so this is called inflection because we technically inflect the forms for whoever's doing the action. But in order to really get a handle on this, as learners coming from without a background in the language, we kind of have to understand some things that are different between Cree and English. So in Cree, we specify the object we're talking about or we don't. And in linguistics, we call this transitivity. And we have this difference in English, but it's very rare. So if I walk in, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I came home last night, I walked in the door, and I devoured. What do you think when you hear that? What, right?
Hungry?
What did I devour?
I don't know.
Exactly. But it kind of leaves you hanging like, what did you devour? What does that mean? And that's because devour in English is a transitive verb. You have to give an object. I came home, I walked in, and I devoured all the pizza. That makes sense. But if I just say I came home, I walked in, and I devoured, it's just kind of missing something. It's kind of hard to explain. The thing is, in Cree, that's all the time. So there's 4 different types of verbs. One of them I'm not going to touch right now. It has to do with weather terms. We're going to leave that for another class. But 3 of them we have to be aware of. So there's different ways to say things. And this can be really fun as a learner because you kind of have to twist your brain around thinking a different way, which is awesome. It's fun, right? It's like a kind of a little bit of a workout. So when I'm going to say something, I'm going to say something to Solomon, I'm going to tell him a story, I have to think whether what I'm doing, so let's say I'm going to tell Solomon I'm going to do something. I'm going to say, Solomon, nūhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. I have to think, okay, I'm going to sit, but does that affect Solomon? Does me sitting affect Solomon? No, there's only me involved in that verb, right? So that's one type of verb, and if we look in the books, we call it a VAI. Because it only involves one person, the person that we conjugate it for. So in a word like ape, to sit, I conjugate it a certain way, I change the word a certain way, hiapian, because it only involves me. Now there's something else, we've got to take a step to the side for a second. In English we don't have this. In linguistics it's called gender, and it changes. Most people are aware of this. There are 2 different genders in Cree. There's animate objects or inanimate objects, or those are the terms we use to make the difference in the category. We can use that for sure. That's a good paradigm or a good way of thinking about it. Or we'd know that there's just 2 different kinds, and in Cree we have to use a different word based on what we're talking about. So to see something, right? So I'm going to step back. I'm not going to use sit. I'm going to use see. So I can walk in and just say, I see, as in I'm not blind, but I'm not saying I see anything in particular. So that would be ewapian. But I can also specify that I'm seeing something in particular. So I come in and I see this chair, okay? Now chair is technically inanimate, or it's one category. And so we use a verb, wapahta. And when I conjugate it to mean me, I conjugate it a certain way. But this is like devour. It needs an object. So I can't just, unless for some reason the context of what we're speaking lets the other person know what we're already talking about, I have to specify what I'm saying. So, e wapahtaman nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. I wouldn't just walk up to you randomly and be like, e wapahtaman, unless there was some other context that made it so the person who's being spoken to already knows what I'm talking about. Because in that case, it's just filling in anyway, but the word is still translating to it. So, but this is an inanimate object. So this is one type. But if we're talking about an animate object or the other type, we have to use a different type of verb. But this is where it gets fun, because that verb, since it involves 2 people, 2 animate objects, we actually mark it so that it shows both. So if I'm going to say I see him, guess I broke my rule. We're going to do all conjunct in this presentation. It's āwāpamuk. And this ending means me to him or her. So āwāpamuk Solomon. I see Solomon. And please jump in here if I get anything mixed up. So this ending literally means me to him or her. I can take another verb that involves two people and put it here, but it's going to be that ending that tells it's me to him or her. So this is something that at first glance seems a bit hard to comprehend. We just have to remember that there are words in English that are like this. They're just few and far between, because in English, I see a chair and I see Solomon. We just use see. We could technically say those are three different words spelled the same way, or we can just say the word is used three different ways. But we do have words like devour that you can only use, well, these ways, because since we don't have two different genders of nouns, there's only one for these two. So this is kind of something neat, because when you're learning as a learner, it's like an extra little like bonus. You got to kind of think about like, okay, what am I talking about? And then you got to think, okay, well, what verb do I use, right? And it can be a lot of fun. It depends how you approach it, right? But so these verbs all conjugate differently, and they all share similar endings, but they're slightly different because they're communicating different things. This one's communicating just a general seeing. This one's communicating something inanimate that you're seeing, and this one is communicating I'm seeing him or her. For sure, go ahead.
So the third one then becomes VTI, right?
This in the book say I didn't label it. So this is a VAI. I see in general. It's not transitive. It's intransitive, I guess technically the I. The te-tap one, since it's inanimate, it's a transitive inanimate verb, and we put the V at the front. So it's a verb transitive inanimate, or in the older literature, it's a TIV, transitive inanimate verb. And this one is a VTA. It's a transitive verb that acts on an animate object. Yeah, that's what the literature uses, so I just use it, right? Sorry? VAI is a verb that's an animate object, but it's an intransitive verb. So yeah, those are just labels though, right? But if we understand the concept that when we speak, we just have to think, what is it affecting, right? Is it affecting just me? Am I just seeing, or am I seeing something, or am I seeing somebody? So just as a side note, when we look up a definition in the dictionary, like Cree Words Dictionary, if the definition is a VTI, it will say to see something, S period, T period. When you're looking through that app, that tips you off that it's this one. If it says see someone, S.O. for short form for someone, it's going to be this one. And if it just says to see, and it doesn't have either of those, it's going to be this one. So we can use that as a shortcut when we're using the dictionary to tell us which basically page we have to turn in the book to find out how we're going to conjugate it. And I'm hoping later when we talk about study patterns, there's some tricks we can use, because this particular paradigm, that's what all the different conjugations, there's quite a few of them, but there's some tricks we can use to kind of get that into our brain. These ones are pretty simple patterns and we can learn them, but there's also tricks to memorize them. So I think it's not tomorrow, but the next day we're going to talk about some of that. What else was I supposed to cover here? That's it? I think so. All right, you want to come take over and do the, I think you're doing tense markers, right?
Red pen.
Red pen.
Okay, I'm going to go with tense. Things that happened, key, past tense. Where do you put them? Uta.
Yeah.
Egi wa pian. Egi wa pa taman. Dihtapuin. Egi wa pamak Solomon. Nothing else changes. Magi gag. Miskitsupain. You go, ma. We. Going to. The Martin is now going to. Omitugi kan sudotina guna. Okay, ego mina, bigo. Ewi wapian, ewi wabahtaman, ewi wapamak. Which is good. Okay, okay, let's try this out. You get mitsahav ben. Nisto. Daar kan ik zoenen. Mitsu. Mitsu. It's just the act of eating. Imitsuyan. Okay. I want to put that in the past tense. Imitsuyan. Up here, this is going to really confuse it. Imitsuyan. Imitsuwan. Some people say W.
Depending on if they're in the Y dialect?
No, it's
got sometimes some people say Imitsuan, some people say Imitsuyan. It doesn't. There's really no strict rule to it. But just so you don't hear it, just so you don't get surprised if you hear somebody say that.
Okay.
When your mouth makes the O sound,
Yeah.
it's already in the shape of a
Yeah.
W. So when you say fast, sometimes it just slips into a W instead of a Y. Y and W are very related.
Okay. That makes sense.
Which is really neat. So we have present tense. I'm eating. I'm going to be eating. I was eating, sorry. I was eating, and here I'm going to be eating. Okay, so this is present. Notice everything stays the same. Except here. This is the only place it changes.
Thanks, Margaret.
It's the only time everything else stays the same. Once you know that, so you just go ahead and put that in. This is the future. This is eat something like eggs, inanimate objects, and follows the same rules. Follows the same pattern as VAI, which is really good. That's good. Be good. Emichi and Maskison. Maskison is inanimate. So I'm eating a shoe, but nobody eats a shoe, right? Wawa. Emichi and Wawa. Okay. Once again, here we have a Wawa and a Wawa. Okay. Past tense. So take a ki. Emichi and Wawa. Kick sip. Emichi and Wawa. Later on. So this is the future tense. We meet you. And so once again, it's right here. Everything's the same. And here we go. Imuagamisk. Okay.
Naughty corner.
What are you guys? Oh boy. There we go. How about Bannock? Hey, more backwards again. Okay, there we go.
I just finally got it.
Finally? Who did? Who finally got it?
Wamona.
Hey, wapus. Okay, that's good. Let's try wapus. Wapus. Okay, I'm going to do this. This is something that people have to keep in mind. A wee muak. Wabus, there we go. Okay. A wee muak wabus. I'm going to eat a rabbit. There we go, that's even better. Okay, notice I have, if this is eggs, okay? If I make that into singular form, no effect on the verb. Okay?
No what?
No, it will not affect the verb.
Okay.
Okay?
Singular.
If this is singular or plural, it doesn't matter. The verb will change.
Okay.
Here I have emuak wabus. I'm eating one rabbit. You want to say,
Wapusak.
you want to say wabusak.
Yeah.
Emuak gik in the Y dialect. This is really strange. Emuak gik wabusak. Okay. In the TH dialect, we get emuak wow wabusak. So we have this and this. It will affect. This is the only time in the verbs you pay attention to. Emuak gik.
To have, what do you call that?
Number agreement.
Agreement, that's it, yep. Wow.
So if the noun being affected is plural, then the verb has to be in the plural form.
Okay.
Okay. But once again,
But not with VTIs. Only with
it's only for VTAs. Only VTAs. It doesn't matter about these other verbs. And it's just really weird. And in the Y dialect, it's emuagik, TS emuagwaw. And in TH dialect, VTA, let's go with the TH here. We go with emuagwaw, wapusuk. 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 Yeah, I want to go with a W.
Okay.
Wapusuk. You want to go wapusuk. So you have to have the number agreement. Emuak, emuagwaw, wapusuk. These two are like that. TH, I like this as a matter of this E instead of A in the Y. Emuagik. So I grew up saying this. I had to learn this like this when I was going to university. Emuagik, and it sounded very strange to me. It took a little while.
Oh.
And so it took me a little while to realize that there is a difference between the Y and the TH dialect, the way we say things. But the patterns are there. Once you know the patterns, you should be able to do all sorts of things with these things. You go say?
Can I add something real quick?
Aha.
If we look for a learner to memorize the difference, if you're trying to memorize the difference between the TH and the Y, this wow actually is in Y. It's just in different form. So you have muakwawi, right? Your future conditional. It shows back up in future conditional, right? Muakwawi.
Yeah.
So that is actually in both dialects, but it's just used differently, which is kind of neat because they both have them. They just use that piece differently. So we can show that another time, but this is another tense. It means like conditionally, if I ate him, muakwawi, you drop the E and you add wawi in the Y dialect, but that wow is the same wow that's in the TH plural. So it's really neat when you see them all together, you can see that both dialects have that piece. They just use it in different ways. So it's kind of, it's in both of them. It's just kind of neat that way.
Okay, the problem with this here, if you start off like this, you have to say result clause.
Right. Like, muakwawi wapuswak niga akosian.
Niga gispun.
Niga gispun. Okay, I'll be full. I will be full. Because this is conditional on something else.
Conditional clause, result clause.
Yeah, right. But it is there, so that's just something kind of neat to remember, like when you're trying to memorize these pieces. Awesome.
You go sit. Let's sit back.